Joining me now is Jenny Towns. She's a research analyst at the Stimson Center and managing editor and producer 38 North. That's a web journal offering analysis on the DPRK. Moon Jae-in, his parents were in the DPRK, went to the ROK. It seems like this is such a big part of who he is and what he wants to achieve there. Some are calling this the moon miracle. He goes to Pyongyang. Things look like they could collapse again. He revives them. Talk to me about what you think is driving him and how important he has been in terms of this process.
Well, certainly there is a political legacy factor here. He does want to be the bringer of peace to the Korean Peninsula, and part of his values is really putting South Korea and the Koreans back in charge of how the Korean Peninsula progresses over time. The problem is that he also is putting a lot of emphasis on economic cooperation with North Korea as part of the trying to solve South Korea's domestic economy as well. But there's a lot of these decisions that he can't do on his own, and he really needs the cooperation of the United States in order to move this forward. And he's moving a little too fast for what the U.S. is comfortable with, and it is causing some tensions in the U.S.-Korea alliance as we move forward.
It's been very interesting to watch this. I mean, that first summit where they walked over on one side, right, then went over to the other side, very dramatic. This one as well, so much pageantry. Yeah. But are we really getting anything out of this? I mean, when you look at that and as well as Singapore, it still seems like we're sort of kind of at the beginning.
Well, I don't think we're at the beginning. I think there has been significant progress on the inter-Korean agenda to improve relations and transform that relationship. And one thing he learned from his predecessors: start early, don't wait until the end of your term, so that you actually have time to try and implement some of the commitments that you've brokered. The problem is on the denuclearization side. Again, this isn't an inter-Korean issue. This is really a U.S. DPRK issue. And I think there are still fundamental differences to how each country wants to approach this issue and what the U.S. is really willing to do. And I think that's really the big test here, is that clearly Kim Jong-un is willing to try. The question is the U.S. willing to pay that price that North Korea wants in order to go down that road?
I guess when I say at the beginning, you know what Kim Jong-un wants. It's the same as at the beginning, and you know what the U.S. wants. They want denuclearization, no strings attached. That's not going to happen. Both sides have to negotiate. Where do you see a happy medium, or is there one?
I think there is one, and I think that's one of the things North Korea was trying to convey in the inter-Korean declaration by saying that they are committed to denuclearization. They are willing to go down that road. There is a roadmap that includes such things as starting with fissile material, stopping the fissile material production capabilities, getting inspectors in, doing these kinds of things in a systematic way. But it is not unilateral denuclearization, and the U.S. has to play its part as well.
So Kim's definition and the Trump administration's definitions, though, very diametrically opposed. What do you expect to come out of this meeting on the sidelines of the UNGA, Mike Pompeo meeting with his counterpart from the DPRK? It's hard to say. It's hard to predict. And I think what we have now is a leader-driven process. So if they can't find common ground on the working level, and I think we have to be a little bit skeptical of what's going to happen, because you've already seen misinterpretations of what was actually in the agreement itself. And so Pompeo's statements this evening talking about North Korea committed to shutting down Yongbyon, that's not what it says in the agreement. What it said in the agreement is they're willing to do things like that if the U.S. plays their part as well. And those kinds of expectations need to be managed better. And we need to have more clarity on what those benchmarks are, what North Korea will get in the process, what North Korea will do in that process, and we haven't had that yet. We really need those conversations to happen. And the DPRK undoubtedly want the sanctions lifted or at least eased. Do you see any movement there?
Not in the near future. I can't imagine that the U.S. is willing to do that, although there are other assurances that they can give, such as no new sanctions while the negotiations are ongoing, because these are also irritants to keep putting more and more designations on North Korea. But they could also do things like lift the travel ban. The North Koreans really care about changing the nature of the U.S. DPRK relationship, and there's a lot of room within that to play before you even get to the sanctions argument, and I don't think that's been explored enough.
Well, Jenny, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thanks for coming in. I'm sure we'll be talking to you more because this is not going away anytime soon. Appreciate it.